Hi everyone, welcome to our online tutorial today. I am Amy Sparrow, the Senior Marketing Manager for Sage Ocean, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we start, can you always please check your settings, and you should be able to see on the screen now a slide telling you what to do. Make sure you follow the instructions on your right-hand toolbar, and if you have any audio, visual difficulties, let us know via the question box, and I'll be happy to assist you. So today's session is Introduction to Qualitative Coding with Delve. Your speaker today is LaiYee Ho. She's the co-founder of Delve, a cloud-based software tool for coding and qualitative research. And on there's some ways to get in touch with LaiYee and with Delve. These links will be emailed out afterwards, so you won't miss anything there. LaiYee studied information science and design and environmental analysis at Cornell. On top of Delve, she writes articles on design and research for various sites, including for Sage, and she's done a bunch of other cool stuff, including help launch the first version of the Amazon Fire TV. Listeners of today's webinar can start a 14-day free trial at Delve at the website below, and they also will get 50% of the first 3 months after that with a special link we'll email out after if you choose to subscribe. So throughout the webinar, please send in your questions either by Twitter using the hashtag SageTalks or by the question box. I can see quite a few people already doing this, and we will get back to you today. Time constraints may not allow us to answer every question, but if your question isn't answered today at the end, don't worry, we will do a Q&A blog follow-up, and that will be emailed out to you with the recording and slides after the webinar. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to LaiYee. Give me a second while I change over the screen. And we should be good to go. LaiYee, you're able to share now.
All right. Can you guys all see my screen?
I can. We're getting a lot of yeses here, and for a couple of lots and lots of yeses. I think it's all good, LaiYee. For a couple of people who are having issues, I'll get back to you in the chat box personally.
All right. Well, thank you so much for handing it over to me. So thanks everybody for joining this webinar. So why don't I just start off with the agenda? So I'm going to start off with an introduction. I will talk about what qualitative coding is, different types of coding. I'll do a step-by-step overview of how qualitative coding can look. I'll go through tools of qualitative coding, and then we'll end on a Q&A. So before I dive in, I want to mention that when I go into this, there are a lot of different ways to code. There's no right or wrong answer for how to code, only what's more or less appropriate for your particular research study. And this is also an entire field. You can spend years or maybe even decades learning how to do this, and I'm boiling it down to 30 minutes. So those of you who might already be experts, a lot of this might seem simplified. I'm showing a snapshot of it, and I definitely encourage you to continue learning after I share what I have here today. So in terms of what qualitative coding is, it's a process of taking unstructured data and then systematically categorizing those excerpts in order to find patterns for analysis. And this is something that's particularly helpful when you're working with information like transcripts, diary accounts, documents, case studies, audio recordings, or video recordings. With this kind of data, it can be really difficult to go through and understand what your themes are if you don't have a structured way to go through it. And as far as where qualitative coding fits in the process, it typically happens in the analysis. So what I'm going to focus on here today with qualitative coding, it's a phase that happens after you've done your research plan, you've conducted your interviews, and you've collected your data, you've prepared your interviews, and then you're ready to analyze. In many cases, this is what the process looks like. This isn't what the process looks like all the time, but in general, qualitative coding happens in the analysis and the reporting phase. And then in particular, a lot of my examples are going to focus on transcriptions today, although do know that a lot of this is applicable to other types of data as well. So I'll start off with talking about what a code is. So a code is similar to a tag or a label, and it's something that you assign to an excerpt of text. You can apply it to a paragraph, a sentence, or a word, and then I'll dive into exactly how you decide what a code is. But I'll just go through a quick example here. So here's an excerpt from a transcript interview, and this participant says, I wake up around 8 and I'll eat breakfast in the kitchen. I will always make tea and eat yogurt and a banana while catching up on the news on my phone. So if I want to code this, one way I can do it is I can highlight all this and I can just categorize this as breakfast routine. And then once I do this, then I can then look for breakfast routine instances in other interviews from other people. And then ultimately being able to code means that I can aggregate all this text into a code called breakfast routine for further analysis later. When you do qualitative coding, there's a lot of benefits. One of them, it enables you to stay systematic and rigorous. It enables you to find patterns and themes. It's something that allows you, once you've done your coding, to really find quotes quickly. And then it also helps you check for biases. So overall, lots of benefits to qualitative coding. And let me dive into two types of coding processes. So deductive and inductive coding are kind of two ways to code, and I'll dive into each one. Deductive coding is a top-down approach to coding. And this is one where you actually, before you look at the data, you're actually going to start off with codes. So you'll develop a list of codes, and that can be based off of research questions or a framework. This is really good for anything that you're using to describe a phenomenon, anything that's very structured. So if you're doing something like program evaluation, or you have a way of doing your research and you want to base your analysis around your questions, deductive is a great way to do it. So start with codes, find the excerpts that fit the codes. Then another approach is inductive, and this is the opposite. So you don't start off with any codes ahead of time, it's ground up. So you actually look at the data, and then based off the data, that's how you derive those codes. This is really helpful if you are coming up with a new theory, if you're doing exploratory or discovery work, and you really want the data to surprise you, or you want to find something that isn't as influenced by some of your preconceived notions of what the code should be. So these are kind of two general coding frameworks. In practice, oftentimes you'll do a mix of the two of them, inductive and deductive. And in my example today, I'm actually going to show a hybrid approach. So I'm going to show a step-by-step approach to how coding works. I'll do a super high-level overview, and then I'm going to deep dive into each step. And like I mentioned in the beginning, there's a lot of different ways to code, and I'm about to show just one of them. If you are interested in learning other ways to code, we also have a guide. So if you go to delvetool.com/guide, we have a number of articles and resources pertaining to other ways to code besides what I'm showing you here today. So feel free to check that out. But let me go and dive in to show you what coding looks like. So in terms of how coding works, in the beginning, I might create a few initial codes. So I'll come up with this, then I will read through my transcripts. As I do that, I'm going to decide what to code. So anything related to my initial codes, I'll highlight that and I'll apply the code. And as I'm reading my data, I will also allow the data to help me derive new codes. So based off that data, I'm making new codes, I'm categorizing more text. Once I do that, I will collate those codes with the excerpts so I can look at a code and see every quote that I have organized around that code. Then I can take those codes and group them into themes. I'll then go through my themes and evaluate them and revise them to see if there's a better way or a different way to restructure. And then in the end, I will write my narrative. And then that narrative, I'll make sure that I'm basing it off of the coding that I did, the things that I found in that process. But that's a super quick snapshot of different steps for coding. So let's go into a deep dive now. Back to step 1, create initial codes. So how do you create initial codes? You can create codes based off of research questions. So in this example here, these are research questions I have on the left. What motivates participants to start the weight loss program? I can boil that down into a code called motivations. And then what I'll do is when I look at my transcripts, anytime a participant is talking about the reasons why they joined this weight loss program or anything that was a motivating factor, I will code as a motivation. And same thing for these other two examples. What do they find frustrating about the process? I made a code called frustrations. What reactions did they have to a new exercise regimen? I made a code called reactions. Another way you can come up with your initial set of codes is basing it off of an existing research framework. So here is a diagram showing the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And from this is based off of research that has previously been conducted. I can take that framework and translate that into a set of codes, and I will use that as a frame that I can use to look at my data. So I've created 3 codes: self-fulfillment needs, psychological needs, and basic needs. Once I create those initial codes, I want to keep track of that in a code book. And when I say code book, what I mean is that can be anything like you can keep it in a Word document or a Google Doc. It's just got a name of your code, the definition of your code, and then some examples of what to include with that code. If you decide to use software, oftentimes it will have a code book included in the software. You can have it stay close to your data, but really it's just a simple log of what your codes are. Yeah, and this is just to show you what that code book could look like if you're using software like Delve. Second step, read through the transcripts. So this is really that step where you're immersing yourself in your data. If you have audio files or video files, get those transcribed. Coding, it's great to have that text so that you can work with that text. Once you have that data prepared, just spend time familiarizing yourself with transcripts. And then I encourage you to read it and take notes. It's really an active reading process where you're getting familiar with what you have. Then the third step, decide what to code and then add new codes. So how do you decide what to code? First of all, definitely code anything that's related to the initial codes you've created in that first step. You can code anything that's interesting or surprising. And then anything that's a recurring pattern you might see throughout your transcripts. So maybe there's an instance or a theme that's really happening with multiple participants. You want to capture that. And then now I'm going to dive into 3 example coding methods. Descriptive coding. This is when you're coding something in the form of a noun, and this is really a way to summarize the topic of the data. So I'm going to switch tabs here, and I'm going to jump into Delve, software for qualitative coding, and I'll show you live an example of what descriptive coding could look like. So I've got a sample transcript here. This is a participant. Her name is Carla, and in this first paragraph, she's talking about how her organization is about 1,000 employees, and I was brought on to join a design team focused on the internal experience. So from this paragraph is generally about the team that she's working with. So I can highlight this section here. I'm going to go to codes, and then I'm going to type in organization and team. So I basically just summarize that as organization and team. And then in the second paragraph, she talks about how there's 3 designers on my team. Each of us owns a part of the experience. So I will decide to describe this as designer roles. So I've just highlighted that. I'm going to type in designer roles, and there we go. I just did descriptive coding. The next example is in vivo coding. And in vivo codes, this is when you're using the language and terminology of the participants to create a code. In contrast to the previous method, this one, you really want to make sure that you are grounded in the perspective of your participant. So you're going to use the literal words that your participants used. So let me go back to that page. I'll show you how to do in vivo coding. In this example here, Anuj, he says, I think that's one of the fears with people doing interview research is the amount of data they'll have to analyze. So right here, I'm going to highlight that. He talks about the amount of data they'll have to analyze. So I'm going to create a code, amount of data. And then in the second sentence, it says, they go, I'm going to make such a mess and it's going to feel overwhelming. So I really want to capture this feel overwhelming right here. So I'm going to extract those words, feel overwhelming, type it in, press enter, and now I've coded that second sentence as feel overwhelming. So that's how you do in vivo coding. You take the actual words that participants are using, turn that into a code. Process coding, this is something where you can use those codes to communicate an action in the transcript. This is really great if you are researching a process, something that's step-by-step or maybe chronological in nature where the timing matters. Let me go to process coding. So in this transcript sample, Ashley here says, I generally read through all the transcripts. So I can highlight that. She's talking about an action, reading through transcripts. So I'm going to create a code, reading through transcripts, and that is a process code. The second paragraph here, Ben says, I did use search to look for quotes sometimes, and that was pretty helpful. So searching for quotes, looking for quotes, I will turn that into a process code. And there we go, that is a process code.
LaiYee, sorry to jump in here really quickly. You've just started to cut up a tiny bit. Do you mind maybe turning off your video and just having the slides? Because the audio is going a little bit, but that's it. It should help once you do that.
Oh, sure.
Right, everyone let me know if that's a bit better in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, is this better?
It's better for me.
All right. Okay, awesome. All right, so if I missed something, what I just talked about was process coding, where you can use codes to communicate an action in the transcript. So you're essentially looking at the excerpts, and then anything that is an action or something that somebody is doing, you can create a code such as this, searching for quotes. That's how you can do process coding. And then step 4, this is when you can collate those codes with excerpts. And what that means is you're just bringing together all the excerpts you've coded and then you organize them all by code. So let me switch back to Delve, a different project over here. And then from Delve, you can click on See Details to the right of a code. And then if you click on that, that'll pull up all the quotes from across the entire project, all organized in one spot. So that's collating. You can see they come from different transcripts. Matthew's transcript, Steph's transcript. When you do this, if you're using something like pen and paper, you can cut out those quotes and then organize them into piles, so it's organized by code instead of transcripts. If you're doing Microsoft Word, then you can copy and paste them all into a document. And then if you're using software like Delve, you can just click on the code itself and then it'll pull this up for you. So step 5, this is when you start to group codes into themes. So when you're doing this, you're trying to find relationships between different codes. You want to find maybe causal conditions or context, like why something happens. Look for consequences of phenomenon, meaning how does one thing lead to another, and then determine some broader categories and make connections between codes. So I'll show an example. So I've got a list here of different codes. So as you can see, it's a flat list. Alignment meetings, collaborating, helping local community. I want to start to think about how I can group these in a different way. So I'm seeing a number of things here that are related to making an impact. So I'm going to make a category header, making an impact. And then from that, I'm going to drag and drop the different codes that I want to group under making an impact. So shape outcome, informing decisions, influencing direction, helping local community. And then I've also got a number of codes here related to working with a team. So I'm going to create a broader category, working with team. And then I'm going to drag and drop team strategy, collaborating and alignment meetings under working with team. But this is essentially how I'm starting to create a hierarchy. And I can see a link between them. So with these top level categories, I can see a bunch of things related to working with team. I can see how that might be causal or correlated with the desire to make an impact. So in general, just starting to group different codes into themes. Step 6, this is when you evaluate and revise those themes. From this, you want to make sure that themes have sufficient evidence behind them. You can get rid of themes that don't have enough data to back them, and then make sure themes are distinct from each other, and then merge similar themes. So if I go back to that same group right here, one thing I can do is I can look at anything that's similar, and maybe I decide that shaping outcome and influencing direction are the same thing. I can really aggregate them into one. I can merge them together. So I'm going to merge two codes into one. And then I also want to rename it. So maybe instead of influencing direction and shaping outcome, maybe I just want to be shaping future direction. So I've just evolved that code by merging and renaming it. And then maybe there's another code here. There's only 2 quotes here for informing decisions. Maybe I decide that that's not something I need for my final report. I can go ahead and delete that. Then for some other codes, from here, I can also evaluate whether or not I want to reshape or change the way that I organize this. Maybe there's a different way that makes more sense than how I first did it. So this process here, this is just a way to evaluate and then see if there's a better way or a different way to restructure the way your themes and codes are organized. And then the last step here is writing your narrative. So I'm keeping this very high level. There's so many different ways that you can write your narrative, whether you are creating a research deck to present to people, or you're publishing a paper, or you're writing your dissertation. So many different ways to do your narrative, but in general, at this step, at the end of qualitative coding, you want to just tell a cohesive story of your data. You want to make sure you have fully thought out themes. You want to communicate the validity of your research and your conclusions. And this is the phase where you're going to be pulling quotes. So I want to show you. So when you're in that phase where you're writing a narrative, I'll show you how qualitative coding can help streamline this process. So normally I would have a separate document with my research report. So I won't walk through that whole process, but I'll walk through how I might go and find quotes for that. So I've got a project here with a bunch of codes. I finished coding, and I'm going to click over to my code book. So I mentioned that a code book is where I've got the name of my codes and the description and definition for each one of those. So from here, if I'm writing my report, and I'm writing the section on education and desire to learn down here, what I can do is go to my code book. I'm going to click into that code. I've already collated these, like I mentioned in the previous step. I've collated all my quotes together. And when I'm writing about education and desire to learn, I can just go through here and find quotes that really illustrate that point and that theme, copy and paste that into my report. And now I've got a quote to really describe it. So when you tell the story of your data, having a code book organized, having your quotes organized by theme, super, super helpful. All right, so those were the steps for qualitative coding. Now I'm going to talk about different tools. So now that I've gone through the process, what are different ways that you can do this? 3 different ways I'll talk about. So coding by hand. Coding by hand, this is super simple. This is printing out your data, printing out your transcripts. You can get a set of colorful highlighters, different pens, highlight different quotes. You can jot down notes on the side. And then when you're doing your coding, you can cut these out into little pieces of paper, put them into piles. This is a great tactile way to do it. If you're highly visual and you like working with your hands, you can do it this way. And then some of the cons of doing coding by hand is that it can be very difficult to do this collaboratively with people. So especially now when a lot of people are working from home or working remotely, this can be very difficult to do. And then in addition to that, if you have a large data set, it can be overwhelming to do all that. It can feel very cumbersome. So pros and cons to coding by hand. The second one, you can do this with document processors. So you can use something that you're familiar with, Microsoft Word, Google Docs, maybe Excel or Google Sheets. You can have your data in those document processors, and then you can set up the spreadsheet, or you can copy and paste quotes between different documents. So you're probably familiar with how to use it. Then the only con is that it's not really designed for qualitative coding. So you might find yourself doing a lot of behaviors like spending a lot more time copy and pasting and a lot less time, really thinking about how to think of those codes and those themes. So pros and cons to coding with document processors. And then lastly, coding with software. So if you're coding with software, I definitely highly recommend this. I will talk about a specific software, Delve, software to analyze qualitative data. When you use this, this is designed with qualitative coding in mind. So I use that to demonstrate a lot of the coding processes earlier, but I'll dive into some other benefits too for using software like Delve. So lots of different benefits here. I'm going to walk through these one by one. So Delve can help you from feeling overwhelmed. So Delve uses a very, very simple interface. When you code, it's very simple. You just highlight the text. You click on a code to code it. I showed it earlier in this chat, but basically very simple, very intuitive, easy to learn. You'll spend more time thinking about the hard task of doing your research analysis and less time learning how to use the software itself. You can save time because it automatically collates those codes for you. So I showed it to you earlier, but when you're using software like Delve, once you've done your coding, super simple to see all those quotes. You can just click on see details for a code, and then it aggregates all those quotes for you automatically. So you don't have to do the copy and pasting between documents. It's all there. And then if you want to see context behind a particular quote, each one of those quotes links back to the original spot in the transcript. So super streamlined, enables you to do that. It also saves time, so you can do things like search all your documents at once. Our customers really love this. We've got global search, so what you do with global search is you can type in a couple words. This is really helpful if there's that quote you're looking for, but you forget who said it. Just type in a couple words, you can search. It'll search across all the documents in your entire project, pull up all those results, and then you can click on a result to go right back to that spot in the transcript. Delve also enables remote collaboration. So it's accessible on Mac or PC because all you need is your browser. You don't have to download any software to your computer. If your team is working on different types of computers, it doesn't matter as long as they have internet access. So you don't have those compatibility issues. And then you also, your project's live update. So within Delve, there is an area where you can look at all your projects, and then you can add collaborators. So if I want to collaborate with my co-founder Alex, for example, I can just add his email here. He's now a collaborator on my project, and then he can come in, look at my codes, and he can code along with me. So really great for remote collaboration. And then we also have live updates. So all the software updates that we have automatically roll out since it is a web application. And that means that you don't have to pay extra when new software versions come out. You don't have to do an upgrade. When you're using Delve, you'll always have the latest version. And then we also have top-notch customer support. So if you're working on your qualitative analysis and you have a question or there's something that you want to do, we've got a little embedded chat box here in the bottom right-hand corner. You can click on that. You can reach out at any point in time. We're more than happy to help you out. So overall, Delve is super beneficial, and compared to other software, it's easy to learn. It enables real-time collaboration. We have very affordable and flexible pricing. We've got friendly customer support, and then it's also accessible from PC or Mac. This is what customers say about Delve. So we've got Maria here who mentions how it's fantastic. It helps her save time. We also got a great review here that mentioned that Delve is a good option for teaching qualitative methods and technologies together. So any of you out there who are either learning qualitative coding or you're an instructor or a trainer, then consider Delve. This is something where people don't have to spend time learning the software. They can just go ahead and dive in and go into the hard parts of qualitative coding. And then the last quote here, easy to use, affordable, top-notch customer support. All right, so that takes us to the end of the presentation about Delve. I do want to mention that we have a special promotion here for anybody that's listening into this webinar right now. If you go to delvetool.com/sagewebinar, you'll get 50% off the first 3 months. Delve is a month-to-month subscription. We have a 14-day free trial, and then you'll additionally get 50% off the first 3 months. So screenshot this, make sure you save this for when you're ready to start your trial of Delve. And then also, if you want to learn more, we have a lot more resources. So if you go to delvetool.com/guide, we've got a collection of articles, we have a guide, we have walkthroughs, we've got examples. Check out different ways to code besides what I showed you here today. And yeah, so that's all I have, and we'll start the Q&A now.
Great, thank you very much. We've had loads of questions come through. That was a really great presentation, thank you. I won't be able to get through all the questions today, but I will pick and choose as many as we can. And then any questions that we run out of time for, don't worry, what I'm doing is I'm collating them and we'll post them in a follow-up blog. And just so everyone knows, the recording will be sent out tomorrow along with the slides, so you won't miss out on any of these links or anything. Okay, let's start with the questions. So let's get up from the beginning. So why choose Delve compared to, oh sorry, they're moving very fast, compared to the software in Vivo? What are the main differences? A couple of questions have come up on that.
Sure. So definitely some differences between Delve and in Vivo. So with Delve, we take a different approach to the design. So we make Delve a lot more streamlined and easy to learn. So in comparison to in Vivo's got a higher learning curve. Delve is something that you can jump in and either instantly be able to start coding or maybe, watch a few minutes of a video and then you'll be able to figure it out. So that's one difference. It's easier to learn how to use Delve. And then the second one is that Delve is fundamentally a web-based, cloud-based tool. So that means that you don't have to download software to your computer. It's a lot easier to collaborate. So if you've got people located in different areas across the globe, if you have one person using PC, one person using Mac, that's no problem at all. You can share your projects with everybody when you're using Delve. Everyone just logs in, and then the project's also live update. So your teammates can see the coding that you've done as it's happening.
Brilliant. Sorry, I was on mute there. And then another question we've had that's come up quite a few times is, are there different interfaces for different languages, or can you use Delve on sort of French texts and other texts in other languages, or is it all in English?
So we support a variety of different foreign languages. It depends on which one that you're talking about. So whoever asked the question, if you want to send me an email, my email is right there on the screen. Let me know what you're trying to analyze and I'll be happy to help you answer that question.
Brilliant, thank you. And then we've got another question that's come up a few times about, does Delve allow audio or video interviews to create transcripts? And if not, do you have any good recommendations for transcribing softwares?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have, if you go to the guide, that's delvetool.com/guide, we actually have a section there on transcription. So Delve doesn't do transcription itself, but we have an article that we wrote in the guide that walks through an entire chart of different options for how to get your audio and video transcribed. And at this time, Delve is text only, although we do have plans in the future to integrate more types of data. So yeah, great question.
Brilliant. Another question about, does Delve provide frequency of the codes?
Yeah, Delve does have frequency of codes. So I'll just go ahead and show you what that looks like. So over here, there's a number to the right of all the codes. And what that's telling me right there is how many quotes I have per code. And then if you click into the details of the code, you can also see, in addition, how many transcripts it appeared in. So this is showing me it's showing in 7 out of 9 transcripts. And then you can also see how many times it appeared in each interview. So we've got a variety of different frequencies included in Delve when you're doing your coding. Great question.
Great. Then we have a question from Jeff Harrell here. We've got a few from Jeff saying, do you think, or is this an either or when selecting a coding method, or should a researcher use multiple methods of coding?
That is a great question. You definitely should be using multiple methods of coding. So everything I showed you, you can do it in a mix and match pattern. When you're coding, it's definitely not exclusive to one method. You really want to just look at what is the goal of your research, have a collection of different coding methods that are in your arsenal ready to go, and then combine them in the way that's most appropriate for your research.
Great. And another question from Dana Watnick here saying, are there other analytic functions besides the simple grouping of text by code, for example, matrices, etc.?
Yeah, that is a great question as well. So within Delve, we have a variety of different matrices that you can create from it. So in here, we've got an export function here. We can create co-occurrence matrices. You can make a matrice of a code versus transcript, code and descriptor. So yes, you can do that with Delve.
Brilliant. And then a question on data, which always comes up on anything to do with this, saying, since Delve's a web-based application, where is the data stored? Because this can be an issue with ethics approval, as often data needs to remain in the country.
Absolutely. And we take data security and privacy very seriously. So that's a really great question. So Delve is cloud-based. The data at the moment is located in the United States. If you have further questions about data privacy and security, we've got a full deck that outlines a lot more detail. So if you want to send me an email, let me know that you have questions about security and privacy. I'm happy to answer those questions for you.
Great. Okay, the questions are coming in hot and fast. Someone's asked about, what about visual representation of codes like maps, histograms, etc.? Does Delve have any data visualization abilities or capabilities?
Yeah, so what you can do with Delve is that we have a variety of different exports. So we don't have those data visualization capabilities in Delve, but we have a lot of exports. So I showed you a snapshot of that earlier. You can export a CSV, and then that's a format that you can then import into other software to continue your data visualization.
Great. Let me go. Okay, we've got one here. Would the tool be able to do text analysis, i.e. for the full text, and look for certain features in the text? That's from Dr. Reshmi.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding it correctly, you can, if you're talking about full text, then yeah, you can highlight the entire body of text and then code that body of text. And then you can also highlight smaller sections of it. So, from here, if I want to code this entire transcript here, I've just highlighted everything. I can code it. I can also highlight a subsection of it. So yeah, lots of different ways you can code any amount of text within your project.
Brilliant. Now we've had quite a few questions come in about the collaboration on Delve. So for collaborating, does Delve keep a record of changes for different team members, or is there a notes function for collaborators to leave comments on the changes that have been made?
So Delve doesn't actively log those changes, but we've got areas where you can write down notes, especially when you're collaborating with different people on your team. So in here, I've got a section here. This is where I mentioned where you can put a code definition, but this is also a flexible text box where you can use that to communicate or leave notes. So if you want to talk about why you coded something in a particular way, or some aspect of a code that you want to communicate to your team, you can use this as an area to leave those notes. And then as far as collaboration, super helpful because your teammates can then see what were you thinking about when you're making that code.
Great, and maybe LaiYee, as a follow-on to that collaboration question, we've had a few people ask about the sort of business model or the subscription model for collaborators. Can you sign up as a team to Delve? Is it individual subscription? Could you talk us a bit through that?
Yeah, so you can sign up as an individual or a team. It is a per user basis, so it's a month-to-month subscription on a per user basis. When you sign up as a team, if you're a team of 3, you'll be paying for 3 different users to use Delve for the months that they're using it. But once you do that, then you can share your projects, you can live update, you can collaborate on those projects, and all be able to see the changes each other have made.
And another couple of the sort of subscription questions, let's say, and we've had a few people ask if it's in the roadmap or if it's ready now for institutional subscription to Delve, so for institutions to supply this to their faculty, researchers, staff.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that. So if you want to talk about institutional subscription, then best way to do that is to just send me an email. So LaiYee@delvetool.com. Let me know that you're interested in an institutional subscription, and then I'd be happy to chat with you about more details with that.
Brilliant news. And also just to say to everyone, do check out the Delve website. We will be linking that out after as well in the follow-up email, and it is also from the registration page. So a lot of this information is on the website too. I'm actually going to jump back through, I jumped around a little bit, to a collaboration question again. So Damien Knipe has asked, can more than one researcher on a project use Delve at the same time? So for example, one researcher coding in one transcript while another researcher codes a different transcript.
Yeah, you can have multiple researchers coding the same project at the same time. So if I've got a project, it's got 10 different transcripts. I decide I want to code the first 5. I want to give the last 5 to my co-founder, Alex. Then he can code those. I can code mine at the same time. They won't interfere with each other. And that's a great thing too. And then I can hop back and forth between transcripts and see how the coding is going in another section. It all live updates as you're doing your coding.
Brilliant. One more on the collaboration question, they're coming in hot and fast, is there a color coding or some sort of thing in place to show different researchers or different users working on the same project?
So we don't have color coding, but we're always working on different ways to support that kind of collaboration. So there's definitely a lot of importance to being able to see who coded what and being able to see what changes were made. If you want to see more deep or learn more about how collaboration works, I know there's a lot of questions here. Definitely send me an email. I'm also happy to do a custom demo for any of you to dive deeper into the things that you're looking for.
Fabulous. And then I'm going to sort of combine a lot of questions that have coming in through. I know you've spoken a little bit, but could you talk through the subscription models of Delve, what the different options are?
Yeah. So our subscription models, we've got commercial and education pricing, and these are priced per user. For commercial, that's $50 a month per user. For education, that's anybody that's a student, an instructor, or somebody that's actively doing research at an institution, $18 a month per user. And with that subscription model, it's month to month. So there's no commitment for that besides that month that you're paying for it. A lot of people really like our pricing because you can pay for the months that you're using it. And then suppose you want to pause your analysis, you can pause your subscription. Maybe you have to go back into the field and collect data for a few months. Then when you're ready to come back in, you can resubscribe, start your subscription again later. And then your data will still be there. You'll still be able to continue doing your analysis. So super flexible in terms of pricing. And then as far as what it comes with, you get unlimited projects, transcripts, and codes. So you can do as many projects as you want. You keep ownership and control of your data. Fast customer support is included. And then overall, it's a flexible way to do pricing. So make sure you sign up at delvetool.com/webinar. You'll get the 14-day free trial in addition to the 50% off the first 3 months.
Great. And then back to data, all the data questions are my favorite when these come in. So we've got a question from a grad student here saying, if you stop subscribing to software sort of at the end of your research project or due to the end of the funding, do you lose access to the work you've done? Sort of where is that data stored? Where's the work you've done stored?
Yeah, so everything in Delve is stored in the cloud, but if you're reaching the end of your research, then you can export all of your data. So you can export your transcripts, your all the quotes, all the notes that you've taken. So what I always recommend when your research is coming to an end is to export all your data out of Delve so you've got a hard copy. And then if you do intend to come back to the research later, after you pause your subscription, by default, that data stays in Delve. So if you pick up your subscription later, you can go back to it. So yeah, it's really up to you. And then in addition, if you're finished your research and you don't want it to stay in Delve and you don't want it to stay in the cloud, you can delete that project. We can wipe that out for you. So really up to you how you want to manage that data.
Brilliant. And I'm going to jump to a couple of questions about the coding that came through sort of early in your presentation. So Dana Watnick's asked, what's the purpose of separating out the different types of code, i.e. in vivo versus process, etc.? She's not seen it before in other coding programs.
Yeah, so in my example, I showed in vivo coding separate from process coding and descriptive coding. That was really just so I can show you the example step by step. In practice, you actually should combine them. So in a single transcript, you can be doing both process descriptive coding and in vivo coding. So yeah, there isn't any benefit to separating it. That really is just a function of how I was trying to teach those concepts.
Brilliant. And we've got another question here about how is the coding on this different from sort of generating themes?
Yeah, so there's coding and then there's generating themes. And coding, I kind of think of that as that first step where you're taking your text and you're coding it into the basic level, kind of the first list of codes. And then when I talk about themes, I'm thinking how those themes come together. So I think this was my example with different codes and themes. So I had a flat list of codes. And then right here, making an impact and working with team, I consider those to be themes just because those are just a category for the codes underneath them.
No, that's great. And a question here from Ursa Bratoon. Apologies if I'm saying they pronounced that incorrectly. A question about Delve itself. Is it possible to save the steps when you're merging codes and making changes to themes to enable peer review?
So if you're doing merging and you're changing it, then there isn't an automatic way that Delve is saving those steps, but I always recommend that when you're doing that, you can always jot down some notes. So as I mentioned, there's this little, I keep pulling this up, but this page here for your codes. So if you merge two codes together, you can write a quick note there. You can say, I merged the codes, X and Y together because blah, blah, and then you can keep a record of what changes you made for the purpose of your peer review. So super flexible, but you have a spot here where you can annotate that, and super easy to keep track of that using that text field.
Brilliant, thank you. Then I've got a couple of other questions about video data, and not just video data, different types of data that Delve is compatible with, about PDF, MP4, MP3. Can you talk about which file types it can be compatible with?
Yeah, so at the moment, Delve supports text only. We do plan on supporting more data types in the future. So something like a PDF, you can copy and paste those into Delve. You can't drag and drop the PDF into Delve, but you can copy and paste the content in there. And then as far as anything that's audio or video, we don't support this at this time, although definitely keep in touch. It's something that we very much might have in the future. With that, you can get those transcribed. And once you have that transcription, you can bring that into Delve.
Brilliant. We've got a great question here about, are there any bits of the qualitative analysis process that you think they are going to be automating or thinking to automate?
Yeah, automation is an interesting topic. It's actually something that could probably have its entire webinar on its own. So there's a lot of different ways. It kind of depends on what you're thinking about in terms of automation. So I've had people come to me with questions about everything from like automatically code everything for me, to automating small parts of the process that can just make it more simple and efficient. So as far as our approach to Delve, we are interested in anything that kind of makes it, anything that might feel repetitive and cumbersome that you're doing already, making it easier for you to do those things. So, I kind of mentioned a lot like how Delve automatically collates the codes for you. Something as simple as this. So I've got decision making. I click on see details and I can see all those quotes all aggregated in one place. So in a sense, Delve has automated a process that a lot of researchers spend time just copying and pasting quotes into a document. So we really love, that idea of making things more efficient, because it's something that researchers are still making that decision about, how things are being pulled together, but Delve can automatically collate those for you. But then if you're talking about something more like automatically coding all of the text across your entire body of research, that's kind of a different conversation in terms of how that can work.
That's a brilliant answer, thank you. Another one here says a follow-on. Is it possible to differentiate between the code levels? For example, codes that apply to the whole document versus to a paragraph versus to a single sentence?
Interesting question. So in terms of differentiating that, there isn't really a visual way to differentiate that besides just being able to see that something is a sentence versus a paragraph. So when you have those quotes collated in Delve, you can see, what's a sentence and what's a paragraph. But that's a great question.
No, we've got a lot of great questions here. I'm really sorry,
Yeah.
everyone. We're not going to get through all of them, but as I did say, we will be following up with the follow-up blog and the recording, the slides, etc. Another question from Ursa here is saying, does Delve enable 3-level categories? So not just categories and subcategories, but another step in between.
Sure. So as far as the hierarchy, you can do this within Delve. So I showed that you can drag and drop and rearrange. You can rearrange these hierarchies. So within Delve, this is how many levels you can do. And then with that level, you can arrange it any way that you'd like.
That's brilliant. Okay, let's get it. I'm trying to make sure I get a mix of running the questions here. Okay. Ooh, 1 second, sorry. Okay, what are reliability and validity issues and how are they justified or verified using Delve? That's from Florence Ferguson.
Reliability and validity issues.
Yeah.
So if I'm assuming that might be talking about potentially if you have multiple people coding on the same body of text.
Yes.
So within Delve, what I often encourage for anybody that's doing that is that if you're using Delve to do that, definitely have a system. So there's so many different teams have a different way to calculate reliability and doing that intercoder rating system. So have a system ready to go. It's not something that, Delve doesn't have a perspective on which approach exactly you should be doing, but you can talk with your team about the way that you want to calculate that. And then you can use Delve to help you have multiple people on your team code the data and then use the output from Delve to see, what your intercoder reliability rating might be.
Brilliant, thank you. And I'm going to try to group another one talking about the software tools again. So you spoke about the sort of differences between Delve and NVivo. But we've had a couple of questions about comparing Delve to other tools, including MaxQDA and just other qualitative data softwares. Why Delve is the question really over those.
Yeah, so Delve compared to NVivo or MaxQDA, one of the biggest differences is that NVivo and MaxQDA, they have a lot of features. I think any of you who are familiar with using that, you got a lot of different menus, a lot of different options. We created Delve because we actually found a lot of researchers who were using MaxQDA and NVivo found those tools to be a bit overwhelming. So maybe difficult to figure out exactly, how to figure out how to do a particular task. A major philosophical difference with how we approach Delve is that we keep it very simple and streamlined. So when you're coding, when you're searching for quotes, it's really just a couple clicks away, easier to learn. And then how that manifests in terms of when you're using it is that, especially if you're new to qualitative coding, if you jump into Delve, very simple to just get started. It's not simple to learn how to do qualitative coding. That's like its own complex field. Theoretically, but the software is simple and easy to use. So we have a number of classrooms and students that like to use Delve because they can focus on the coding. They don't have to be learning the software itself. So that's one thing. And then the second is definitely that it's web-based and cloud-based. So much easier to collaborate, easier to work with a team when you're using Delve.
Brilliant. And just sort of not a question, but just a statement to support you on that. We've had a couple of people, including Roger, say, I've used it in vivo, but Delve is really easy. It's much easier.
Awesome.
So we've had some feedback come through there. And just, sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but another question back, sort of following up on the validity. Are you thinking about enhancing Delve to support intercoding rating, i.e. intercoder reliability?
Yeah, we're definitely exploring that. So whoever asked that question, I'd definitely love to have that conversation about, what exactly you're looking for. So feel free to send me an email and then we can talk about, how Delve can support your process.
Brilliant. I think you'll be hounded by emails after this. We've got a lot of great
Yeah.
questions coming through. That's brilliant. A question from Navneet here saying, how about the acceptance of Delve by editors and reviewers? Maybe I can answer this a little bit as well, especially in top tier business journals. So is Delve and the use of Delve recognized in research methods when submitting and publishing in journals?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually don't have the answer to that. So great question. But
That's all
again,
right.
yeah, you can send me an email and then I can also answer
Yeah.
it later
And
on.
also, obviously, I don't work in the journal side of Sage Publishing. I work for the Sage Ocean side of things. However, we do publish research projects that have used Delve, and we've also just published the Delve book on how to use Delve for qualitative research. We'll link that out also on after the webinar. Okay, so now another one here. What do you think we'll be doing differently in qualitative analysis 10 years from now?
Wow, that's a really
A big
great
one.
question. 10 years from now. So when we started Delve, I think one thing that my co-founder Alex and I talked about a lot is that we really feel like really, really basic technology can help a lot more people more easily do qualitative analysis in the sense that um, we're right now living in a world where there's a lot of really advanced technology for things like machine learning, artificial intelligence. Um, that's going at lightning speed. In the meantime, qualitative analysis today, at least, we see a lot of researchers, using pen and paper, slowly cutting out quotes and putting them into piles, which is great for qualitative analysis as a process. But we really do believe that really simple pieces of technology can really make that more efficient. And when I say efficient, we really believe that qualitative analysis really still needs the human mind, the human and analytical processes to do it. So we are not so much of a believer as like artificial intelligence replacing qualitative analysis, but being an assistant to qualitative analysis. And the best examples of that I have today are things like something like being able to search for quotes across your entire project so that you don't have to do Control F find in every single document, or clicking on the code detail page so you can see all your quotes aggregated into one place. So those are simple things that we've done today, and I see those as technology augmenting and assisting, our human brains as we do qualitative analysis. As far as how this looks in 10 years, I think that technology will change a lot in the next 10 years and make things more efficient, but our process, the fundamentals of qualitative coding, the fundamentals of how to think about translating text into themes, analysis, and writing reports is going to stay the same. But hopefully we can just move a bit faster and we'll be less hindered by the tools that we have, and we can just be more free to do the more complex and advanced thinking that's required for qualitative analysis.
Brilliant. And I'm aware we've only got under 2 minutes left now. So maybe we can direct people. Where can people find out more about Delve, or sort of more training materials, etc.? Where can they find that?
Yeah, great question. So we've got a website here, delvetool.com/guide. This is where you can see more training materials. If you want to learn more about Delve itself, just go to delvetool.com. We have more information on the software on there. We have information on different ways that you can use Delve. We have a variety of case studies as well. So if you want to see an example of how other researchers or other institutions have utilized Delve, just go to our website. That's the best way to look through it. And then in addition to that, we also have a Twitter and an Instagram. So please go and give us a follow. We'll follow you back. And then also we publish different articles related to qualitative coding. And if you follow us on Twitter, you'll see the latest. You'll see all the new stuff that we come out with.
Brilliant. Okay, so unfortunately we're now at time. So I'm just letting everyone know that what we will be doing is tomorrow you'll receive a recording of the webinar, the slides, some links that you've seen seen here today, and then in the coming week or so we'll be publishing a follow Q&A blog, so to get all the questions that you missed, and that will be published on ocean.sagepub.com. So you don't miss out. You can subscribe to the Ocean newsletter at ocean.sagepub.com/big data newsletter. You'll be getting that link as well in the follow-up email. So sorry if your questions wasn't answered today, and LaiYee, thank you for answering so many. That was a really great presentation, and we've got a lot of people raining in their thanks now. And thank you everyone for joining. Apologies if you had any audio issues, but I think the majority of people were okay. So thanks very much, LaiYee, and thank you everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.